Good morning, everyone. Yet another conversation and yet another industry leader with me. So, today we have got Mr. Narayan Nilakantan, CEO of Block Armor, and also a co-founder of the company. He has been in the position of CISO for National Stock Exchange in India, a known veteran in the information security arena. So, we are pleased to have you, Narayan, in this conversation, and we'll definitely be talking about things which probably excites you and probably excites the audience nowadays because we keep on talking about this, the new age, cyber security. That's what we keep on talking about. But probably everybody has got their own definition. Everybody has got their own way of explaining it. But today probably would like to hear it out from you, Narayan, that according to you, what exactly are these new age cybersecurity threats are, and how they're impacting us, and how they're different from the past threats that we had, that we had in this cyber arena. So, welcome, Narayan, and please share your thoughts on this.
Sure. Thanks, Arindam, and thanks for setting this up. And as always, it's a pleasure to meet you and be part of this.
Always a pleasure.
Very interesting question, which obviously also, it's something that cannot be addressed fully, in like 5 to 10 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll kind of start with some background. So when we say threat, right, if you go to the basics, threat is something, there are two parts to a threat. One is who is actually attacking you.
Correct.
And what is being attacked, right? These are the two things. So there is an attacker and there's a target, very simply. Correct. Now, if I were to kind of, compress this entire thing in like 2 to 3 sentences.
No, you can take your time. Don't go by the conversation that we had before this recording, please.
Sure. So very simply put, if I go back 10, 12 years ago, right, when we used to do threat modeling, when like NSE is a critical infrastructure institution, right? And I was the CISO of NSE for quite a long time, spent more than 15 years there. So when we used to do threat modeling, we always used to consider, what is the level of risk that is exerted by a particular threat actor. If I give an example of threat actor, typically 2 large categories. One are the ones who use the free tools, what we refer to as script kiddies, and the ones who are really sophisticated and well funded, which is what we typically refer to as the state actor, where you've got some kind of backing. Now, over the last decade, this line has got really blurred. And we really need to think when we do threat modeling, do we really have to worry so much about the actor? Because anyway, even the script kiddie has got access to so many sophisticated tools. You look at the last couple of years, right? We got so many instances of NSA having a repository of tools which got leaked. So then you have got Stuxnet, right, which was actually the beginning, right? Stuxnet is historically one of the first sophisticated polymorphic malware that was kind of put together in order to derail a program, right? So imagine the kind of funding and the kind of research that went into it. Now, what happens if this kind of tool or this kind of vector becomes available mainstream? So the moment Stuxnet got leaked, right, the code or the base code of Stuxnet got leaked, right, it was havoc.
Correct.
So what is happening is, when you are looking at it from a defender perspective, right, the real definition of threat has taken a completely different connotation. You can no longer go to your management and say, you know what, okay, we are a banking institution, or we are an insurance company, or we are a retail firm. Hence, there are only so many people who will be really interested in targeting us. We are not a real target. So, we don't really need to have this level of security. The reality of today is the script kiddies have no clue of how to do that particular thing, but they have got access to the tools. It's like saying that, you're distributing AK-47. The guys on the ground don't know how to really aim and fire an AK-47, but they still have it and they will fire randomly, and you might actually get hit by a bullet. But the problem is the defender has to still defend. It doesn't matter who is firing that AK-47, right? You still need to defend, because if you get hit by the bullet, you're going to die. So that's where, if you ask me, the journey that cybersecurity defenses and the way attacks are happening has evolved. So if I give another perspective to it, the underground internet, right? Where typically, the dark web, where typically you had to really join a particular group and, you had to become part of that, become a trusted party to that, and then gain access to tools, technologies, information, is now become so organized that you actually get crimeware as a service. So you go there, you join, you get into Tor, you open that website and you say, I want a ransomware toolkit. $10 ransomware toolkit, you get access to it. Now what you need to do is you just need to identify a vulnerable organization which are available dime a dozen and launch it. You don't care, yeah? You spend $10. Even if you say target 500 organizations, you get successful in even breaching 10 or even 5, your job is done. Your return on investment is much more than what you would, do by even running a business. So that is the kind of
500% ROI.
500% ROI. So the challenge is we are dealing with such kind of elements today, which you cannot really compartmentalize and create those kind of risk profiles and say, oh no, you will defend only against these risks. So my personal view is it is time where we start looking at cybersecurity in a different way, right? Wherein we assume that there is going to be a baseline of attack. Of course, you can't defend against everything, right? It is impossible because end of the day, you want to run a business. You have finite resources in terms of people and investment. So within that, right, you need to have a very clear strategy on these are the 50 baseline attacks that I need to protect. Doesn't matter how big or how small I am. And this is what you see even what the research guys are talking about, right? Look at the Gartner or the Forrester report. If I was reading a Gartner report 6 months ago, 51% of attacks in the last 3 years are on SMBs. Imagine 51%. So half the attacks are on SMBs. So it's not like people are targeting only large institutions or large enterprises and the SMBs are spared. Now imagine the plight of an SMB. What is the kind of investment they can make in terms of defending against these attacks?
Securing themselves.
Range from a simple attack to a sophisticated attack.
Correct.
So the approach that you need to take is you need to have solutions which kind of deliver value to you as a customer, rather than just invest in these point products. Like, for example, let us say we are talking about data leakage, for example, right? Then you need to make sure that whatever data leakage solution that you're implementing is giving you comprehensive protection. And today vendors are also kind of coming up the curve. And again, analyst firms are also pushing them. So if you look at what Gartner is saying, he's saying that vendors also need to support the ecosystem by integrating with each other. Because at the end of the day, the customer needs to see the value in terms of end-to-end security. So at the end of the day, he needs to be he needs to kind of have a technology or a process or a people infrastructure in place which will give him an assurance that end of the day security is being delivered, not that this product has got implemented and that product has got implemented. So I think that is where a lot of these things are coming together. It's not an easy journey. It's of course it will require multiple things to be put in place. But I can clearly see that both the vendor organizations as well as the customer organizations thinking in that direction. That it's time to move away from point products and rather focus on more holistic kind of.
Because I think when we are talking about this point products, we had a known enemy. I mean, we knew, that there is a pattern of enemies or pattern of threats that we're gonna, stop from this. But the situation that what you're saying right now, we're actually fighting against the unknown. We don't know whom we are fighting against. Like, I mean, the scenario that you have said, that you're just given an AK-47, the guys on the ground don't know how to fire it, but they know they'll fire. They don't know how to fire, but they'll fire. So anything can come from anywhere and hit you. So that probably has changed the complete, scenario of cybersecurity. But you have been advocating about blockchain particularly. I mean, we have been, again, I mean, blockchain is a topic where people nowadays have started asking, are you a supporter or you are against blockchain? I mean, that's the kind of conversation people start with. I mean, I had a very interesting conversation with one of the gentlemen probably a week back. And the first question he asked me, Arindam, do you support blockchain or you are against blockchain? I said, what kind of question is that? I mean, that's a very surprising question. I said, okay, take it as I'm a supporter of it, and then tell me. So he had a different version when I said, and then he had a different version when I said, probably I don't trust blockchain. You have been advocating blockchain, and that too, in an arena which is cybersecurity. So where do you see these two, big things in the market today coming together and helping us to actually fight the unknown? I mean, how exactly would you explain that?
Right. Like I was saying earlier, right, the situation on the ground has changed. So now if you have to defend against so many people, you also have to look at newer technologies. You can't just use traditional technologies to defend against next-gen attacks, right? It's not going to work.
Correct.
Now, coming more particularly to blockchain, right? So if you look at the top 3 new age technologies that everybody is talking about, it's blockchain, AI, ML, and then of course, when it comes more particularly to security, it's also quantum computing, right? These are the 4 where people are placing their bets in terms of delivering better security. Now, if I talk about blockchain in particular, right, there is a lot of misconception about blockchain because people are not able to de-link blockchain from crypto, because crypto is mindset. So basically what you are saying, right? Why is somebody asking you that question in the first place? Whether you support blockchain or not. So the question should be whether you support crypto or not. It's not whether you support the technology, but it's the use case.
Correct.
Because the technology can be used either way. It's like the same example, right? I gave you earlier. So the police also carries a gun, the criminal also carries the gun. The tool is the same, but then you trust the police and don't trust the criminal, right? The use case is different. The same way, blockchain is the same, whether you use it for crypto or use it for enterprise, right? Now, the challenge that has happened in the last 4 to 5 years is blockchain is a very promising technology. Unfortunately, for a multitude of reasons, not many enterprises were able to adopt it in mainstream. Although a lot of money and energy was invested in it, they were not able to implement it for solving a mainstream production use case, and a lot of it remained in development. The only successful industry or application of blockchain happens to be crypto. In fact, it's become a $1 trillion economy. It's become a parallel economy, right? So if you look at the crypto exchanges today and Bitcoin and Ethereum, so Ethereum touched about $3,000 last week, right? Or early this week, which is quite a significant value that has been generated in just less than 10 years. And Bitcoin, of course, we all know where it is going, right? So from that perspective, it gives you the kind of perception that every day you get up in the morning, the only thing you hear about blockchain is crypto, right? So then blockchain becomes crypto.
It becomes synonymous, actually.
Yeah, it becomes synonymous. Whereas in reality, crypto is just one use case. So whatever, there are supporters and there are a lot of governments also supporting crypto. In fact, UAE, right, is the biggest example.
Correct.
And there we don't talk about crypto at all. It's pure blockchain. So UAE or Dubai in particular, they were early proponents of blockchain, and today a lot of the state machinery, a lot of applications have moved to blockchain. It's a reality.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right, and the benefits are there for everybody to see. So I think governments have been more proactive in adopting this technology, and I'm sure that enterprises will follow suit. It's just that so far the way I explained, right? So I keep talking about blockchain a lot, especially to the finance sector, the leadership of a lot of banks and financial institutions. And what I tell them is, the problem with blockchain is a solution in search of a problem, and not the other way around. And hence, there has been a lot of misfits that people have been trying to force fit blockchain into something that it doesn't really deliver too much value around. But just because it is there and you need to find a kind of problem that it needs to solve, you are trying to force fit, and that's where things are failing quite a bit. But as we see, if you look at predictions, I think in the next couple of years, mainstream enterprises will start adopting blockchain. Of course, crypto is becoming again. If you see the race, right, there it is crypto which is winning the battle, because a lot of mainstream investment houses have started investing in crypto as an asset class. And couple of weeks ago, I heard a news where the German parliament actually passed a resolution that, you know, the pension fund, which is one of the largest in Germany, can now have 20% of they can invest 20% of their funds into crypto.
Correct.
So again, crypto seems to be winning that race over there, where enterprises are more looking at it more as an investment avenue. But if you look at cyber security in particular, like, it's not just that blockchain is limited to solving financial problems or rather technology use cases in the banking or the financial ecosystem, but also in supply chain, but more so in cyber security. And this is something that we have done up close and personal, so I can share that to a great deal of depth. So if you look at blockchain, why is it so well suited for cybersecurity, right? So you talk to any cybersecurity practitioner, and you ask him, you know, what are the three pillars of cyber? They will say confidentiality, integrity, availability, right? These are the three pillars of cyber. And blockchain has got all these three features inbuilt. So the data which is there on the blockchain, which resides there, is encrypted. So you get the confidentiality part. Again, you get the integrity part, because an identity which is created on the blockchain, right, it is very closely coupled with the data that the particular user or the owner of their identity can access. So your integrity is very high. And automatically, if somebody is trying to move some data around, you cannot go back and say that I didn't do it, because it is signed with your own identity. So the integrity is so high. And of course, availability, because it is a completely distributed ecosystem. There is no single point of failure. So now when you have these three capabilities in the blockchain, it becomes an automatic fit for solving a cybersecurity use case. So if you see a lot of organizations or startups in US are trying to leverage blockchain for the identity and the integrity part. So there are companies which use the hashing power of the blockchain for determining the integrity. So every system or every asset in your environment, there is a hash which is created, stored on the blockchain, and every 5 minutes there is a new hash which is computed, and it is continuously compared. So what this does is, in case there is any change, and this is what attackers do today, right? They have become so stealthy that they will put something in your endpoint, or they will inject a malware, and you will not know about it as well, right? Because your traditional antivirus or other mechanisms can't detect it. So this becomes a very innovative way of managing things at scale. And because blockchain has the power and it can be distributed, it does distributed computing. Even in a 100,000 asset-based customer, you can easily deliver value over here. So that is one use case. The second very popular use case is on the identity part, more from an authentication part. Wherein, you know, when you are challenged with an authentication, right? So nowadays, you have these passwordless concepts coming in, right? So one of the biggest challenges today is phishing attacks. So easy to phish a user, right? So if you look at statistics, even in a very mature organization, in terms of information security, there are mature practices, the success rate of phishing attacks is 7%, which means that 7 out of 100 people will still give away their password, despite whatever training and processes you put in.
Processes that
very high number.
Correct.
So the next step there is, you know, why do you need a password? So if there is nothing to be compromised, there's nothing to be faced, because there's no password which exists. So you've got these passwordless mechanisms coming in. Now that passwordless mechanism, one of the core principles on which these systems are built is having a very solid identity which cannot be breached or which cannot be tampered with. And that identity part comes from the blockchain. So you got a couple of companies in the US which today, you know, use blockchain for, which they have used blockchain for building a passwordless authentication system. What we have done, of course, is a little bit ahead. where we have combined all the three things, keeping in view our holistic view of cybersecurity, where we have taken authentication, authorization, and access.
All the three things
And
coming together.
All three things coming together. And blockchain plays a very pivotal role there, where the identity of and the policies and the logs, right, are all stored on the blockchain, so that you have a tamper-proof identity. B, you write your logs in such a way that they cannot be tampered with, which means that you have full visibility, which is again coming back to sophisticated attack, where attackers are able to erase their tracks. So visibility itself has become a question mark today. So we are using this technology in a very innovative way, trying to extract the maximum power that we can, and of course serve a distributed ecosystem, because that's the new normal, right? And it's not just distributed applications, but also distributed people now. So with COVID coming in, it's all distributed users.
Remote users, remote workers, remote working, which has become the new normal right now, actually.
Absolutely. So when everything is distributed, you also need a distributed system to be able to cater to these distributed identities. So that's where I see a lot of potential for blockchain, especially when you're dealing with identities and looking at the integrity of systems.
I think very interesting use cases of blockchain. I mean, what you said is correct. Actually, it is more of a mindset that whenever we talk blockchain, we only talk about crypto, and we forget that it can be actually used for lot many other things. I think this was a very insightful point that you have made, that how cybersecurity, how you have advocated blockchain with cybersecurity, and how probably a lot of other companies have been talking about blockchain in a completely different way altogether, because we keep on hearing blockchain enabled, but how these three pillars coming in together under one umbrella, and when blockchain is giving you a complete backbone out of it, I think that makes a very important and a very interesting point out here. I think that was a pretty quick and a good one, Narayan, and I'm sure we should have more detailed and elaborate sessions where probably we can talk about one-to-one sessions with customers, one-to-one sessions with potential seekers who wants to know more about it. But because we have kept this format as a very short and a crisp format, I think it was more than more than what I expected. I thought it will be a very short and crisp one, but it was more elaborate and it was fantastic one. And the very unique approach altogether for both blockchain and security coming in together. I mean, that's something that I really like it. I'm sure the audience will like it too. So thank you so much, Narayan. Thank you so much for joining in this conversation. And this is just a beginning, and we hope to keep this kind of sessions coming on from your side. New insights, new thoughts, and lot of myths can be actually broken with your kind of an experience that you have got, and a kind of disruptive approach you have taken for your organization, actually, rather than just talking about a pointed solution, or talking about a complete holistic approach of protecting an environment. I'm sure there'll be a lot of disruptive ideas and statements that are going to keep coming in from your side. So thank you, Narayan. Thanks a lot. And it was a pleasure having you in the conversation.
Sure, Arindam. It was a pleasure speaking with you as well. And look forward to these sessions. Really interesting, having this chat.
Thank you so much.